Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. So if you've been around the channel at all, you know that I have a very special place in my heart for Shakespeare, in particular Hamlet. I wrote Laertes as a Hamlet retelling that had just been burning in my soul for a long time. So obviously I have a ton of stuff on that play, but for this all about just the Soliloquies series, I thought I'd branch out a little bit and do a soliloquy from Macbeth. Now it is the speech that Lady Macbeth gives after she first gets the letter from Macbeth in Act 1, telling about how he encountered the witches and what they said to him, how they promised that he would, or rather foretold that he would become the king of Scotland, and she just grasps onto that. The soliloquy is broken up into two pieces, basically. She's interrupted in the middle, but I'm going to take a look at both parts of that and break it down. So I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope you learned something, that you get, to kind of look more deeply into this very juicy soliloquy. So here we are in Act 1, Scene 5 of Macbeth. So enter Lady Macbeth reading a letter. This is why this is considered a soliloquy, by the way. A soliloquy is not only a speech, but one that's given alone on stage by the character, or by somebody who at least thinks that they're alone on stage. If you've seen the To Be or Not To Be video, then Hamlet is actually watched by several people, but that's not the case here. It's just her reading a letter. The letter is written by Macbeth, and it tells all about the witches and their famous prophecy that he will one day become the king. So I'm picking it up from there. She says, "Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised." And then a little colon there. So Glamis and Cawdor are different areas. And so he was the Thane of Glamis, and then the Thane, he was promised to be the Thane of Cawdor. And he actually gets the news that he is the Thane of Cawdor almost immediately. So he has more confidence that this prophecy will probably come true. And so that's what that's referring to. Hopefully you already have the context if you're watching this video, but that's what that means. So Glamis thou art and Cawdor. So you're in charge of both. And shalt be what thou art promised. That is the king, of course. So it's interesting that she says, you shall be, you definitely will be what you are promised. There's a question throughout this entire play, how much of the events are fate and how much are determined by free will. And here she seems to think, okay, this is absolutely going to happen. There is no doubt at all. The witches said, "Hail, king that shalt be," and I am 100% on board, is what she's saying. She's going to take that to a greater level here in just a moment. "Yet do I fear thy nature," she's talking about Macbeth here. "It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way." This is pretty fascinating. Another theme that we see throughout this entire play is the ideas of masculinity and femininity. And Shakespeare really plays with the stereotypes here, kind of flips them on their heads, challenges them quite a lot. And here is one of the first places where we see that clearly, besides the bearded witches from before. So, "Yet do I fear thy nature." You are too full of the milk of human kindness. We're going to have all this kind of female-coded language being associated with not only kindness, but weakness as well. And that is what she fears in Macbeth, that your kindness is going to prevent you from having the strength to do what is necessary. She has no such compunction, interestingly, but she says, "I think you are going to be too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way." So here's where she starts really taking control of the narrative here. She says, "Oh yeah, you'll definitely be the king. You will be what thou art promised." But then she recognizes almost immediately that they need to do something in order to make that happen. It's not necessarily going to just happen on its own. but they need to actually catch the nearest way. And she'll be clear later on that means killing the king and replacing him. So, thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness shouldst attend it. That's how that line goes. The illness should attend it. So let's look at that. So you want to be great. You're not without ambition. So we know that Macbeth has an enormous amount of ambition. He wants to be great. And she acknowledges that. She says, okay, you might be a little too kind. You might want to go about this a softer way. But you do have ambition that is paired well with mine. You would be great. Art not without ambition. But there's the phrasing here, we have a double negative, so it's a little bit wishy-washy. It's like you're not without ambition. It's almost a litotes, an understatement. But without, she says, the illness should attend it. In my edition, you can see the little two there. Illness, they say, refers to wickedness, and it does. Like, you need to have this kind of ruthless wickedness in order to actually get what you want in this situation. But I think that that's an oversimplification, because throughout the play, wickedness and illness are actually hand in hand, like physical. The physical responds to the spiritual, and that is even the case in the rest of Lady Macbeth's speech. So the illness that should attend it, I think that means both wickedness and some kind of physical wrongness as well, even though she might not directly mean it that way. Shakespeare pairs those two up. What thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou holily, which is a bit of a mouthful. So what you would do to achieve the goal of your ambition, you want to do in a holy and a kind way. So just reiterating essentially the ideas that she had said before, but in a new way. Wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. So you want to be the king. You can't be the king unless you're willing to do these ruthless things, unless you're willing to play false. So it's like, there's some cognitive dissonance she's claiming with Macbeth, wanting these things that can only be ill-gotten gains, but without being willing to take those drastic steps. Thou wouldst have, great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do, if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do than wishes should be undone. Okay, this is probably the gnarliest section so far. So thou wouldst have, that's what that LDST means, wouldst, would. You would have, great Glamis, again that's Macbeth, that which cries, thus thou must do, if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do than wishest should be undone. Here again she's saying something pretty similar. She says, if you want this greatness, then you have to be willing to do something that is unsavory. Hie thee hither, so, come closer, essentially, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valor of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round, which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. Okay, so here we start to get into some of the juicier parts of this speech, I think. So she really wants Macbeth to arrive back at the castle so that she can pour her spirits in his ear. This has a lot of meaning. It's interesting that just like in Hamlet, where Hamlet Sr., the king, is murdered by pouring poison into his ear, we have this idea of the poison of words being poured into Macbeth's ears here, and that being Lady Macbeth encouraging him toward this ruthless action of getting rid of the king. So Another meaning of spirit is connected to the spiritual realm as well. It's spirits as in kind of a liquor. It's spirits as in spiritual, as we see with this last part of her speech. I'll kind of return to that idea. But there's something physical and spiritual going on at the same time in the way that she's talking about this, just like we see in the rest of her speech. So I want to kind of seduce you into this idea almost. And then she says, I want to chastise with the valor of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. Now this, okay, so before we saw that she blamed Macbeth for being too feminine, and she's going to return to that idea again. Feminine in the negative, stereotypical, weak way, which again, Shakespeare definitely challenges in this play. And she, by contrast, has, with the valor of her tongue, she is going to chastise him and get rid of, vanquish almost, all that impedes him from the golden round. The golden round is the crown that would be placed on his head. So her weapons are her words. Her valor comes from the way that she fights with her mind and the words of her mouth. So she kind of sets herself up as a more stereotypically masculine character, where she is going to battle for this, almost the valor of my tongue, and making this happen, being very proactive, having a lot of agency, which is more attributed to the males, again, according to her and much of the writing at the time. Which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. So she returns at the end to the idea that this is fate, this is going to happen. But if you notice, she talked about fate at the beginning, she talks about fate at the end, but all in the middle, she says, okay, we need to take ruthless action here or it's not going to happen. So she's kind of speaking out of both sides of her mouth there. Okay, so there's a messenger who comes and says that the king, King Duncan, the current king, the one that she is ready to off, is going to come and visit. So how convenient is that? So her soliloquy is interrupted by this messenger. The messenger leaves, and Lady Macbeth just loses it. So here's the rest of that speech, where we really get that sense of the physical and the spiritual, the masculine and the feminine. So here we go. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. She is just this, she already sees herself almost as this queen. It's not Macbeth's battlements, it's my battlements. So the raven himself is hoarse that croaks. So there's a sense of impending doom. Obviously, there's a sense of prophecy of death, inevitable death of Duncan as he arrives here. So there's a sense of prophecy and fate with this raven idea. And here we go, that spiritual physical thing. Come, you spirits, there's that word again, spirits that we saw up here. She wants to pour the spirits in his ear. You spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Oh man, there's a lot to unpack here. So she's calling on dark spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. So mortal has two meanings here. Mortal meaning human and mortal meaning murderous. That's what the four little note says. So murderous thoughts, but mortal is just human as well. So come, you evil spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. So she wants to be not a woman in the traditional sense. Again, she's returning to that idea of traditional femininity being full of kindness, weak, having little agency, and masculinity traditionally being more associated with agency, with cruelty, with the ability to fight with valor. all of these things. So she is done with this traditional femininity. She wants to be full of direst cruelty. So her association with masculinity is of the toxic variety, and she is just embracing that. She wants to have that for herself. So fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. There's a physical analogy being made here, and the physical and the spiritual just bleed into one another throughout this entire play. Is it physical? Is it spiritual? Is it fate? Is it free will? There's so much uncertainty going back and forth, and we see that just absolutely highlighted here, where she calls on the physical, or rather on the spiritual, to change something physical that will change something spiritual. It's just like a big circle. Make thick my blood, and stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. So she's speaking still to those evil spirits. I mean, she is aware of the wickedness of what she's calling out for. Yet she welcomes it. She says, "Stop up the action and passage to remorse." I'm really not sure why there's a little footnote here, pity or tenderness. I mean, we know what a remorse is essentially. That no compunctious. So compunction is remorse. So no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose. Fell is like grim, or it's a little stronger than grim. Nor keep peace between the effect and it. There was a belief at the time of Shakespeare's writing that people's personalities and just tendencies were largely influenced by the fluids inside your body. So if you had more blood or more bile or more phlegm or whatever, then you would act in a different way. You would be phlegmatic, that would be more phlegm. You'd be sanguine in personality if you had more blood and that kind of thing. So I think Shakespeare is kind of referring to some of those ideas where there is this sense of, change my body chemistry so that my personality will match what I want it to be, which is ruthless and cruel for this moment. Come to my women's breast, she says. Again, the obsession with masculine and feminine. Come to my women's breast and take my milk for gall. There it is again. Right at the beginning of this speech, she was afraid that Macbeth had too much of the milk of human kindness. She says, no, exchange my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. So she is wanting to be rid of any sort of feminine kindness so that she can obtain the goal of her ambition, which is to become the king and queen of Scotland here. Wherever in your sightless substances, sightless has two meanings. We have so many multiple meaning words going on here. Sightless as in invisible, and sightless as in they can't see. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. So this entire time she's addressing these evil spirits, you murdering ministers. This is a word that comes up in a couple of important moments with Lady Macbeth throughout this play. The idea of ministering to someone who is sick or wants to be changed. But you can study the play on your own for a bit more of that. Come, thick night. So she's calling now to the darkness. All of this language, by the way, if you haven't noticed, and it took me a while to notice, and maybe I'm not alone, is very witchy. It is. She sounds like she's calling on these powers because she is. And it's thick night, it's murdering ministers, it's do these magical changes within my body. So she is a lot like a witch type character, like we saw at the beginning with the actual witches who make this prophecy. So she is mirroring the kind of way that people would see witches at the time. And there's more I could say on that, but I'm already kind of taking a while with this with this speech, so consider that on your own, but it's pretty interesting stuff. Come, thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. Again, she knows it's wicked, and she's just welcoming it. That my keen knife. Keen has two meanings. Keen means eager, and keen means sharp. So that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. This is interesting. So once again, we have the spiritual and the physical just playing against one another. So she says, come, thick night, in a physical sense. Let's cover everything in darkness so that my knife doesn't even see the wound it makes, and heaven itself cannot see through the darkness to cry, stop, hold, hold. There's a spiritual kind of darkness that she's referring to here, but there's also a physical kind of darkness. I think she wants to be both physically and spiritually blinded to this so that she's able to go through with it, and she is able to avoid any sort of compunction, like she said, or remorse for the actions that she sees necessary to make the prophecy come true. So there's just a ton going on in this speech. I hope you learned something. But there you go. So that was it. Lady Macbeth's most famous soliloquy, I would say, in William Shakespeare's Macbeth. If you have anything to add, please put that down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, and more importantly, subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. There is more analysis on the way. So if you have any recommendations for another soliloquy for me to analyze, then please also include that. I would like to hear your suggestions. So until then, I will see you next week.